about my story of how I got into this business. Um, Passive house design and eventually in certification. So we've started as clients in 2012. I don't want to go that far back. I mean, time flies. But yeah, that was the time when we were thinking about, there must be a better way to live. Or there must be a better, types of housing that we can live in. And we kind of embarked on this journey of trying to build our own house here in a urban environment. As you can see from the background of this slide, there are houses very nearby, the one that we have built. So this is a shot from February, just before we moved in. So we moved in like in April of 2013 in this house. So so the journey on this passive house, trip started as a client, as being clients in 2012, actually. Yeah. And why did we do this? We were just not comfortable and we were paying too much in an 80s built condo, trying to condition this, in winters, icicles hanging. Boston winters were a bit colder than they are right now. I can tell you that. Boston summers were also hot and humid. So, changing the light bulbs in the winter, I would just feel a draft in my face. Like, what's going on? Is it wind in my ceilings and walls? It's like, is this the way to build? Maybe 80s were the worst time to build something because, energy was so cheap and abundant. So it was sporadic insulation in the walls there. So yeah, I decided to research this to see, is there anything better? And then I heard about this thing called Passive House. And what is this thing? And just browsing, even in 2012, you can find a lot of things on the web. And there was an article in Boston Globe about somebody building a high performance house in suburb of Boston called Roxbury. Very tiny, small house. An architect in training building a house for himself. So I managed to kind of find his contact information, called him up. His name was Simon Hare. Um, and my wife and I met with the team, which was just two guys at the time from Boston Architectural College, still in college, like year four or something like that, in a local cafe. And they came by bikes. And they admitted to us they don't own any vehicles. And, they're builders, they're a design build firm. One of them got trained on Passive House in 2011. I think that was the beginnings of the trainings in the US. Maybe Rob, you got trained, around the same time. Um, and they were eager to make house number two by Passive House principles, and we kind of jumped on the wagon for that. You can see on the bottom right the picture. This is during the construction of our home. And they would come to the build site and you can see the bicycles just parked there on the site. And all the materials, all the tools were either delivered to site, or they would rent a U-Haul and bring some stuff just for the moment and then return it. So the whole house was built by bicycles. Let's be bold and say that. Um, so yeah, where we started, another lucky draw is trying to find a urban infill lot, very grown in, old set of garages from 1920s. Luckily not under historical protection. We had to check that, so we didn't have to, deal with that. But, a lot of garbage and stuff. Um, Reinforced concrete ceiling, which had to be jackhammered down. And that day during the demolition, there were like 50 calls to City Hall, complaints about us demolishing all this. But we bribed them back with some pies afterwards, so neighbors were much happier during the construction. Yeah, so Design was going well. They were using PHP version 1, as you can see. So there is a kind of a detail from their build up and the cross section. I think, you know, they kind of knew what they were doing. They knew they had to build a airtight, insulated envelope all around. Checking this in PHP. Some things were giving me yes, some things were not yet quite up to the certification level, but we were kind of proceeding with design iterations, and they were doing the PHP along the way. Construction, some new ideas to me. I wasn't in construction industry then, but it seemed to make sense. I think they consulted with a lot of early passive house enthusiasts from Northeast, from Maine, from Portland, Maine. I forgot what's his name, but he was one of the first ones on the scene. So innovative kind of foundation system, stem wall on the outside, a raft, ring beam, concrete ring beam, which was insulated all around and separated from the stem wall with rock wool here. And then the joists were laid on the inside ring beam, um, double stud wall, where the inside wall would then sit on on the joists here, and the outside 2x6 would sit on the stem wall there. So this was, one of the ideas that they wanted to put in practice, and this gave a lot of space in the floor for insulation. So all of this was filled with dense pack, and even some space below the TJIs, the floor TJIs, and in some areas 46 inches additional. So a very well insulated floor assembly there. They went and learned about membranes, and Sega was selling in the Northeast, and they opened a training center in New Hampshire, southern New Hampshire. So it's like half-hour drive from Boston North. And they got trained in there how to, tape up and install the membranes and all that. So these are Sega membranes on the exterior, and Sega membranes on the interior, all taped up to the window frames. So yeah, year was passing, construction going well. Early 2013, all done. We were calling it Park Passive House, even though these guys were telling me, well, you can't really call it a passive house unless you certify. Do you want to certify? And we, in principle said yes. But by the end of a year of construction and, unavoidable friction between us and them, we were kind of happy to see the backs of each other at a point. So we parted amicably. Um, but this passive house thing was, put in the background and a kind of a back burner. We just wanted to move into a new nice house and enjoy living there. And yeah, the question was always at the back of my mind, is this really a passive house? As I was engaging, with the community here in the Northeast and telling them about this home that we live in, everybody was asking, is it certified? Well, no. Well, how do you know it's a passive house then? So this was really nagging me, through the years, and I'll tell you how many years in just one slide. But I was monitoring, what the house was doing and what we were doing in the house in terms of energy consumption, and just a crude spreadsheet of, monthly electric bills, because it is an electric house. Um, but it was doing well, right? It was less than 15 kilowatt hours per square meter per year in 2013, first year. The second year, a little bit over, but both of these years, P, or total primary energy, was below 120. So it was encouraging, right? And we were not really using set points set by PHP, like 68 for winter and 75 for summer. For winter, definitely not, right? You can see our thermostat is set to 73. we like it warm, we're kind of biased that way. So ambient temperature was always between like, I don't know, 72 and 74 or 23, 24 Celsius. And only one head downstairs was on, starting like late October through, I would say, beginning of April or something like that. So just constantly on. We forget about that it's on. We don't hear it. And it's even temperature throughout the house. So really enjoyable, place to be. So if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, is it a duck? And 7 years later, I decided to check and enroll into a, PHN course. It was given live here in Newton, Massachusetts. I think that was the last one of the live courses before COVID, I think. So here we are all packed in this room. It is a large room, February 2020, things are closing up. If you still remember how it was during COVID, I almost forgot everything. Um, and we're having great John Mitchell from Building Type in New York City give us the course, 8 to 5, 5 days a week, or a week, cramming, drinking from a fire hose, but awesome type of experience. You learn so much. So I got even more convinced that I should try to do this. And I was talking to John during the course, like, what do you think? Can I certify a house that is built 7 years before, um, and those builders are gone? He's like, it's possible, but you'll need this, 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 and that, right? So he kind of rattled off all the things that I would need to have to go through this process. So I'm like, okay. Um, it sounds possible. So let me see if I can do it. So, but first, let me try to learn, what it takes to certify a home. Um, few things before I continue here. So the course ended February 2020, right? We have to study and then wait for the, exam, for the proctored exam, also live proctored 3 hour or 4 hour session. I don't remember anymore, but that was getting postponed. It was supposed to be May. No, it's not going to be May. It's supposed to be July. No, it's not going to be July. It's supposed to be September. No. Um, so I decided, the heck with this. I'm not going to wait. Let me see if I can certify this thing myself, because I learned that you can get your CPHD accreditation if you certify project or if you take an exam and pass. So let me see if I can certify this. So I started researching and learning about what it takes to do that. So going to Passivhaus, .org website, finding all the materials and guides and criteria what it takes to certify a passive house. Learning that, pulling up all the examples that they have in terms of documentation that you need to have, plans, PHPP, blower door test, and all this other things, photographs. Luckily, I was taking a ton of photographs. I think everybody told me this. Do you have photographs of your project? Every weekend, I would be here on the site and I would take, I don't know, 20, 30 shots of the progress. And comes Monday morning, those guys were dreading that I would send them emails, with images saying, yeah, what about this? What about that? And, we would kind of review the progress during the construction that way. But these images, proved really handy in this whole process of certifying in the end. So yeah, I learned what I need to have. First thing, plans. And I looked at the plans these guys left me. It was a paper set of plans, construction drawings, not quite what PHI wants, right, in terms of how they should be, denoted, how the assemblies build-ups should be listed, what type of details you need to have there. There was no blue line, red line, airtight layer, thermal layer, all these kind of things. So I had to build a 3D model and try to create a set of plans. So I'm not an architect. I'm a mechanical engineer. So I bought SketchUp. I learned SketchUp, spent, a bunch of hours on YouTube. I have CAD background. I was in a 3D CAD software company, but for mechanical design, parametric 3D, associative design, all that. So learning SketchUp wasn't that hard. It's a different software and maybe slightly different paradigm, but it's a learning curve. So I was running around the house with a tape measure in my hand for like 2 months, verifying the stuff from the drawings that they left to what's actually built, building every stud and every, rim joist, every base plate, everything needs to be in those details I had to model in. So, so here's 3D model up there, some details, cross section and details of window installation. So, okay, a couple of months of that work, check. Right, next thing, learn what else needs to go into PHP, right? Learning PHP. During the course, you learn some basics on it, right? I think it was like one afternoon on Friday, the last day of the course, getting you ready, what to expect when you start using PHP, what's in the PHP, right? There are these sheets, this goes there, this goes there, but the mechanics of, creating that information or calculating this information that goes into that one cell, right? That's a separate process, right? You have to spend time and learn how to do that. So there's some guidance online or Passipedia, but I think the community, Passivhaus community, was invaluable at that time, right? Everybody's sitting in their offices, COVID time, Passivhaus accelerator, godsend, right? Learning who's in this community, getting in touch with these people, politely asking questions. How do we do this? How do we do that? What do you think, what do you think I need for this? I mean, everybody was so generous with their time and sharing knowledge. You know, I don't know if I would be able to do this on my own in my room here, to figure all this out. So I think community is invaluable, and what you're doing with this chapters, it's a way to go as well, to share knowledge. So, big shout out to building type guys in New York City and a bunch of other folks on Passivhaus Accelerator that I got connected with. TFA calculation, right? Once you learn it, what goes into it, straightforward. You go down PHP and you go to the domestic hot water tab and it says lengths of hot water lines. Like, okay, how do I figure that out? So it's nothing on the plan. So you have to on the plans, you know where your taps are and know where your hot water tank is. And I approximately know from the images where the, plumber has laid the lines. So I try to model that in SketchUp. Okay, bunch of lines, measure the lengths of those lines, and here we go. So that kind of process. So since I don't have flat ceilings, I have cathedral ceilings, so I have to model the volume of the air inside for BN50 parameter. So for that one number, right, you can spend 46 hours building this volume and, getting this sum of these volumes of individual rooms to have for this one number to enter into ventilation sheet. And you need this number for blower door test, so it's used in the equation when the technician is measuring CFM of leakage of your home. So all learning experience, right? So you come to the shading tab and you're like, okay, how do I do shading Well, there's this great new algorithm in Design PH. It's a plugin to SketchUp. And this algorithm, uses ray tracing and it's really accurate. And you don't need to do this manual estimation of, from your glazing to your nearest obstacle. What's the height of your obstacle? Left, right, top, bottom for every window, right? So that's the manual way, old way of filling out the shading tab. Or you can use this new plugin. All right, let me go buy this new plugin, learn how to use it. Um, and in the process, right, you'll learn how to import the neighborhood. You'll learn how to import the trees. You'll learn that you need both summer trees and winter trees. And you learn all this kind of stuff. Thankfully, through a bunch of courses that were, running at that time by Ed May, he was doing a design PH training and all this kind of stuff. So, without these resources, it's almost impossible kind of figure all this out on your own. But hey, another month or so, learn how to do this just to fill in 2 columns in the shading tab, right? Okay, but making progress. All right, so what else I need? Thermal bridges. Oh man, okay, so what's this? So we learned about thermal bridges in the course, but how do you calculate this? Oh, there's this tool called Therm. It's free. Hey, great. So let me download that. Let me, see if there's some free courses out there, and there were some, PowerPoints that other people have posted out there from the trainings. So learn that. A lot of consultation with the community. Um, Learned about the better tool called Flixo. So learn that tool, bought this software, learned that software, and calculated, the details for my home. Um, 34 of these guys. So afterwards, I learned you don't need to do all of them. But, what did I know then? And I wanted to make sure, these guys have done a good job. Have they installed Windows in a, you know, thermally proper way, let's say, have not really botched this thing and prevented me from, certifying this home. So I want to check all this. And luckily, they did a good job. A lot of these were, non-thermal bridges. As you can see, there were some negative values here. So, these help out. These lower your heating demand and other parameters in your PHPP. Um, some windows were very close to thermal bridge free. This head is 0.01 and a thermal bridge free is 0.006. So pretty close. So another 2 months for that, right? So here I'm pushing August, end of August. Um, and PHPP is looking good, right? Certification documentation, what do you need? Of course, you need a blower door test. Do I have this certificate? I know these guys have done 2 of these blower door tests. And I found some emails that told me what the numbers were. So I'm like calling them up. Hey guys, can you tell me who has done this? Who was the company that has done the blower door test? And I called this guy. Said, do you still have the certificate for my blower door test? He's like, yes, I do. Thank God I didn't have to do this again. So he sends it to me. Good result, 0.43. So that was the final one. And the preliminary one after the house was closed up was also good, below zero point 0.6. So, okay, another checkbox. PHPP going well. All right, so I have heat pumps in there. How do you enter multiple heat pumps? Or I have one heat pump and I have, 2 heads in the house. So there's this tool by PHI called heat pump calculation tool. You can get for free, but then you have to learn how to use it. Okay. So you have to enter a bunch of data from the heat pump information in these tables. Where do you get this data? All right, so you go to Mitsubishi website, you find the Mitsubishi website, pull up their, engineering data, sort through a number of tables, find the right data, plug it in, get the results, plug this in into PHP sheet. All right, so you go this like this sheet by sheet. You learn what you need, you learn how to get it, you spend time and money sometimes on trying to get the tools and learn how to use the tools to produce this number, a set of numbers to plug into PHP. So basically, that's the process you go through. So here I am pushing September, right? So how do I certify this? Called up, some people here in the States. Many of these companies are focusing on large multifamilies. There's not too many folks that are doing single family, and I got an advice to go directly to PHI. Um, you know, some of the folks I talked to, they've been doing this for years. So I called them up, told them the story, told them what I have. They're like, sure, okay, send us what you have. They send me a proposal. Uh, I can tell you, it was like 4,000 euros, I think. And yeah, that's a risk, right? That's a 4,000 euro risk. I send them all this information and the money, and then they review. And what if I made a mistake somewhere, right? I'm a brand new CPHD, right? I'm doing this for the first time, but let me take the risk. So I think I sent this mid-August, and 7th of September 2020, I get certificate back saying everything looks good. And they send me a plaque soon after. So it worked out. So I answer my question, is this really a passive house? And in the end, it became a passive house plus because I added these PV panels in 2016, about 3 years after we moved in. So that also got included into the certification. So that enabled me to get my accreditation, CPHD, and that's how my new career actually started, switching from corporate world, working for a shareholder, to working for myself, just like Rob, one man band in my room here in my house. So that's it. Many
Awesome.
many years after, it's better than I ever imagined. So happy to be part of this community, and thanks for inviting me to talk to you about this.
Such an incredibly great service that you provide, Vlad. I really appreciated the information that the feedback that you gave us on the Marshall Firehouse. So
You're welcome.
it's I mean that's the thing that I'm reminded of every time I look at the actual process is that it's really nice to have someone who knows what they're doing to collaborate with on Passivhaus projects because it's a lot for one person to do um, by
Yeah,
themselves and while also managing the permitting process and keeping your clients happy and you know
yeah,
meeting budgets and so on and so forth. So it's yeah,
yeah.
great that you're
You're
out
right.
there.
Yeah, and for a newbie as well, and you being an architect, you're right. You have additional things that you just mentioned here. Um, yeah, but a great experience, right? It's almost as if becoming a heart surgeon, you do your own heart surgery first, right? To learn, and then you know what you're doing afterwards, right? If you survive. So um, not as dramatic as that, but kind of. But yeah, I think the community is the key. Without having these resources and without having people being open and ready to jump on a call with you in a Zoom call and exchange emails and saying like, send me your PHP, let me see where you got stuck, or send me your Flixo file, I'll tell you how to fix this. It's like, it's invaluable, really. It's like, this is how to learn.
Yep, just like Bronwyn says, Passivhaus is a team sport.
Yep, it is.
And that's something that we were discussing this morning at the Passive House Empire State meeting. It was, there are folks who really excel at this, at particular, like the insulation or whatever it is. And, how do we, when we're approaching projects, how, without being competitive, how do we share that information? Like, no, I know someone who can make your life so much easier. Getting that,
Right.
having those conversations would really, be wonderful if we could, have a bit more, um, well, I don't, it would be nice to have more people at the table to discuss these things and share, the labor and ways that people like.
Yeah, there were these, ideas of coaching, right? Having some folks coach the newbies on how things work in the real world, maybe after they finish their CPHD course and take the exam and pass the exam, right? How to onboard them into this process. So I'm open to that.
Mhm.
I've been coached and I've been helped, so I'm ready to kind of pay back some of that.
And we do have a mentorship program that's the six.
Right. Right.
And my hope, at least as community coordinator, is that after the 6 months, you actually switch and you are set up with a different mentee or a different mentor so that everyone can have a chance at meeting multiple people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone has a different expertise, really, and different ways of explaining things. And so, if at this point we are now offering a free year of membership to CPHD graduates from EMU,
Mm-hmm.
we're encouraging them to sign up so that we can also include them in the mentorship cycles as well.
Yeah. That'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah.
So everyone can start talking more. It's the whole point.
Yes.
At least
I
for
agree.
me.
I
I
have
think
some
that's
questions too.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
So what is your day to day like now, Vlad, in terms of, clients and how busy you are with your career as I guess it's a certifier, right?
Yeah, as a certifier as well, right? So it is very busy. I mean, more than I expected this year. We'll see how next year goes, but I think there's still plenty of projects going around. Some centers of activity are Colorado, are West Coast, California right now, particularly also with this rebuild in Altadena and in Palisades, I think. So yeah, I've been engaged in a few of those projects. I've been also called up a couple of years back to do HVAC design for passive house projects. Um, Apparently, there's a lack of MEPs who are trained or well versed into passive house or high performing homes. So they design appropriately, right, the system. So I've been called up by architects saying, well, I get these MEPs, they're still oversizing the systems and putting these monsters, humongous things in my passive homes, and it just doesn't fit. And I got asked if I was willing to do that, and I started doing that. And now I actually have more of these HVAC design type of projects than the design and certification. I have a few certification projects which are, you know, they just started, right? The contracts have been signed, but not all the materials have been completed and ready, but they committed to do that. So I'm still kind of in the holding pattern, waiting for the materials to come so I can start reviewing design projects, Colorado and California. This year, last year, there were multifamily projects in New York City. This year, no. So fairly busy. I think I have, plate full for this year, probably half of next year.
Okay. How long does each project take? I guess it depends on the project, but
Yeah, it depends on the project, right? So there's lots of, stops and starts and, rush to wait and wait to rush. So yeah, some like one in Colorado is now in the final stages of construction. I think it began in December 23 with the preliminary, energy model. Permit was approved in January 24. Construction started mid 24, let's say. Yeah, final PHPP is so close because I'm still waiting on some photographs and some final details
mm,
to confirm as built, but yeah, soon. So I'm hoping soon. Certifiers lined up, did the first round of reviews, but yeah, it can just drag on, right? So in that case, you just accept other projects to run at the same time.
mm. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I could
Yep.
benefit from some coaching. I got certified a year and a half ago, and I actually had a couple clients, architects who hired me before I got certified, and I was doing the work, and then I went and I got the certification, passed the test, and then everything dried up, and I was like, well, I was doing better when I wasn't certified, and
Yeah.
so I could use some help with how to get that kind of stuff off the ground. But as far as what you went over today, Vlad, could you speak a little more about the thermal bridging? My house in Victoria
Sure.
here was built in 1988, and I've built a model in SketchUp and have put it into PHPP, but I really
Mm-hmm.
struggle with how to reproduce the thermal bridging because I don't have the plans for when it was built, and the city doesn't have the plans for when it was built, and I really don't want to start ripping out drywall just to look at it. How do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I had photographs, so I can reproduce from the photographs, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I built the 3D model, right? And from the 3D model, I got the details and sections. But at least, I mean, do you have a basement? Can you go in a basement and look at the rim joist and how the wall is sitting on your foundation wall? Or, I mean, that's probably the most critical. Is it
I'm on a slab.
a Uranus lab? Yeah, that's a pickle. I don't know. Rob, do you have any ideas?
I've gotten up into the attic and I've measured how far the 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 rafters are.
Okay.
I mean, one possibility might be some thermal imaging. I mean, that it would you might be able to sort of back out level of insulation from the difference in temperature between the ground outside and underneath the slab. But that would be without doing
Mm.
destructive testing. I don't know how you could actually
Well,
really
I, I
verify.
like I like that idea, Rob. I've been intrigued by those, and I've and you've just given me a reason to go buy a new toy. So
I mean, Vlad might have a better idea of whether that'd be possible or not. I'm really just kind of spitballing.
Yeah, I think that's a possible way. I mean, you'll maybe see in some areas that you have insulation. What do you do if you see in some areas that you don't have the insulation? That would that compel you to actually open that wall and then put some insulation in there? Um,
probably.
Probably, yeah.
I
So
know I
you,
have insulation in because I ended up opening one wall behind the backsplash of the bathroom counter When I took
Mhm.
off the backsplash, it took out some of the drywall. So I can see the insulation, I can see the vapor barrier there.
Oh, there is a vapor barrier there.
Yeah.
So in the 80s, they were putting vapor barriers.
88 in Victoria, BC.
Uh-huh. Okay. Is it just plastic sheeting?
Yeah, the translucent plastic
I
sheeting.
translate, yeah.
And
That
that's
probably,
behind the drywall?
That's behind the drywall and between the drywall and the insulation. I had
yeah.
like a 3 inch by 14 inch piece I could look at
They,
when new
yeah.
installed the backsplash put in too much silicone.
They could probably hurt you more than help you, I would think. These days, it can, it's not breathable, right? So it's not controlling the diffusion. So
Okay,
any condensation that happens on that plastic sheeting will just drip down and wet the bottom of your
okay,
wall there.
Yeah, I think
yeah, and
I have a used to do that in my projects as well before I took the Passivhaus course. And so I think we're blessed in the Northwest with relatively mild and forgiving situations, so that probably be uh, less of a chance of uh, moisture accumulation than it would be if the project was in a colder climate or higher elevation.
okay.
But still, it's yeah. I don't do that now.
Okay.
So David, our advice is rip, rip off all of your drywall, especially in your bathroom. Remove that plastic sheeting, and that way you'll see, how your wall to foundation junction looks like. So yeah, you'll make big strides. So some destruction is needed for, further construction.
Okay, so take it down to the studs, you're saying.
Exactly. At least in the bathroom where you suspect there's plastic sheeting, but that could give you a.
My wife already doesn't like you. So.
I see. Doesn't she want a new bathroom?
Oh, definitely, yes.
There you go. Justify that way.
Okay, all the tricks. Thank you.
Oh, sure, sure. Good. Well,
Oh, I have a quick question about your
please.
plastic conversation. So that is a question that I hear come up a lot, is where do you put the vapor barrier and where do you put the moisture barrier, right? So if you have an air barrier, you have a vapor barrier. The vapor barrier is permeable to a certain degree depending on where you live in the country.
Yep.
And typically, at least before Passivhaus, you would use your paint on the inside wall, right, of your room as your air barrier. But we all know it has a bunch of holes in it because you put up towel bars and you put up pictures and you put up all stuff. So
Yeah.
how do you create that air barrier? I suppose you is it still going to be a vapor barrier more than an air barrier on the inside?
Yeah. So let me open maybe some images here. I'll show you on my own example. All right, so let me find where we can see that, and I'll try to answer your question. Images.
I'm thinking back when we put a new living room on our house, and I think we put the plastic up on the ceiling, thinking the heat, mostly goes up. And now I'm thinking, oh, should we have done that? Not that I'm going to take our ceiling down, but
Yeah, let me try to find some good images here. Why can't I find them now when I need them? So basically, the membranes you buy today, right? Either vapor control membranes or weather-resistant barriers, right?
Mhm,
So weather-resistant one goes on the outside. Oh, windows,
mhm.
doors, installation. So here we go. Let me try to find this.
And that's really a
Okay,
moisture barrier, correct? But it still has
right, but
vapor, vapor
but it's
permeable.
right. So you want that one to be vapor open. Let me try to find it.
Okay.
So let me try to find. So this blue one is
Mhm,
a weather resistant barrier. It's also an air barrier.
mm,
It's vapor open, right? So it doesn't allow bulk moisture to go through it, but it allows the vapor, water vapor, to air out from the inside of the assembly outwards,
okay,
right? But it's also airtight. So the
okay.
pores are so small, so only the water vapor molecules can pass through it, but not air molecules. Right? On the inside, you see this white one is the vapor control layer. So it's a similar barrier to this one, but it controls how much moisture passes through it from the inside into the assembly. But it's also an airtight layer. Right, so both of these are airtight. On my house, I have two. So I have, belts and
So what's the
suspenders.
percentage, like a point what of vapor that it allows
Right,
for the
so
air barrier?
so there are parameters for that. I don't remember what they are.
Okay.
Right, so this particular one is for the heating dominated climates where you generate all the water vapor during the heating season inside a home. The water vapor drive is towards the outside, towards the colder area, right? So it wants to go through that barrier, through the control layer into your assembly. And if any goes through it or goes through any, imperfections in it, right, it enters the assembly, it may hit the cold sheeting on the outside and condense, right? But you need a lot of it, right? So diffusion is not the major culprit in creating a condensation inside of your assemblies. It's actually convection. So openings in your airtight layer. That's why the drywall with paint is not good, right? You have all your outlet openings and the air can migrate behind the plates of your switches and plugs, right? And that air that migrates carries moisture, carries a lot more moisture than it would go through this membrane. So that's why it serves double purpose, right? It controls the amount of diffusion through it, but it controls, more importantly, the amount of convection, amount of air that can get into your assembly from the inside. That's more dangerous than diffusion through the membrane. It's more like some tear in the membrane. And when your electrician is pulling the wire and punches it, right, they need to tape up really carefully around that wire, around that pipe, your plumber. So that's why it's important to do that. And the outside one is vapor open. So if any moisture gets into the assembly, you want that to dry out during the summer easily, right? So you have perm ratings for the outside, and the good ones are like perm 50 to 80, I think, right? And the inside membranes have perm rating of 3, 4 to 7, if I remember correctly, right? Kind of orders of magnitude smaller. And now, they make smart membranes that detect which direction the vapor drive goes, right? If it's in the winter, the vapor drive is from the inside towards the outside. So it closes up. But in the summer, the vapor drive is going the other way, right? It wants to go towards the inside. So then the membrane opens up and allows any moisture that got into the assembly from the outside to enter inside, and then HVAC system cooling, right, evacuates it. So Intello makes it, and also Sega makes now smart membranes. Mine wasn't smart. This was, 13, 14 years ago. But I looked up into the ceiling cavity at one point through the skylights, have skylights. So I opened up like 8 by 8 inches drywall. So David, you can do that and patch it up nicely. Actually, I put a plastic cover, something that you can remove later. Cut through the membrane, moved away some insulation and put my phone in there and just took pictures around. And the sheeting was bone dry, so I was happy. I did this like 3-4 years ago, I think. I don't remember why I did that, but I was just curious. And that was the easiest place for me to kind of access inside the assembly. So membranes do their job. I mean, um, they're there because building science told us these things are happening, and they help us in that respect to make durable, right? Resilient and durable buildings.